Welcome to Inside Coverage. It's the how and why of what's going on in the NFL. And we are ready for a Thursday edition of the show. Going to be a fun one. I'm Jason Fitz, hanging out with C-Rob, Charles Robinson, and, of course, Ben Fawkes joining us. C-Rob wearing the Tigers hat. C-Rob's going to be in a good mood tonight, right? Tigers just want – you feeling happy? Got the joy down in your heart, C-Rob?
Yeah, we're going to get pounded by the Mariners. Really looking forward to that today. You know what? It's all right.
What's that attitude? Come on.
It was nice to see them pull it together and move on. I still don't think it makes up for the epic collapse in the last month of the season. But what can you say? Now this is where they turn it around. Hopefully.
You know what? I'm going to be a beacon of light, and I'm just going to say this all works out for us. By the way, you guys can watch us on the Yahoo Sports Network. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us there. Let's get into some of what we've got going on. Starting tonight, obviously, but we've got a big weekend in the NFL. We talked about it yesterday. We will talk about it again because now we actually know that Dillon Gabriel is starting. Vikings against the Browns in London. Dillon Gabriel's first start. And I don't know, C-Rob. There's a part of me that looks at this and says, okay, Dillon Gabriel's first start's a big part of it. But Carson Wentz played like trash, like hot garbage last week. So if Carson Wentz doesn't play any better, I don't really know that we are going to see much offense in this game.
Yeah, and again, I don't think it can be underplayed, too, that the Vikings, being out there 2 weeks in a row, I still think that takes a toll. I know some people are like, well, if you're coming back and having to play a game the next week, I just think it's weird to be displaced like that for 2 weeks. I still think there are lingering body clock things that happen over a 2 week span. And look, the Browns defense is elite. It's just the reality. I know it didn't look that way against the Detroit Lions, but I think the Detroit Lions are going to make a lot of good defenses look bad this year. And this is the issue with Wentz again. Throughout his career, he's been that guy, right? Where the tools are there, the frame's there, the skill set is there to be a potentially elite quarterback, but it's always been the decision making, particularly in the most horrible moments for him, that teams have never ever been able to iron out. And so the question was, can Kevin O'Connell, could he get him on track fast enough to eliminate some of these mistakes and the poor decisions? And obviously we did not see that in the first week out. I would not be surprised if the emphasis is pushed up a little bit to try and get JJ McCarthy up and running, but this game will have plenty to say about it. And if you're the Browns, I think you look at a scenario where you're like, look, it's not ideal to roll a quarterback out going overseas. It's not ideal to roll a quarterback out going against a Brian Flores defense. To me, that's completely true. But I also see this being a game where the Browns, it could be a 10-7 game where the Browns defense effectively wins this for Cleveland. I think that's completely feasible playing Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and just jumping in, I'll be as objective as I can as the Vikings fan and analyst, but totally agree with C-Rob on Wentz. I think actually, if anything, it kind of threw people off the scent a bit, that Bengals game. He didn't really have to do very much because the defense scored 2 touchdowns, had all these turnovers in the first half. He didn't play that great in that game outside of the opening drive where they scored a touchdown. So it's not like he's been great necessarily for 2 weeks. This game, Vikings 3.5 point favorites, the total 36.5, even down to 35.5 at some books, which is about as low as you're going to get. The money still on the under, which you can understand with a strong Vikings defense, really good Browns defense, although Myles Garrett potentially limited in practice. We'll see. That would obviously be big. The big things for the Vikings here, same with the Browns, is just injuries. The Vikings, Christian Darrisaw will play, which is good because he was out the first couple weeks, but Brian O'Neill out, the center out, Ryan Kelly, Donovan Jackson, the left guard, also out. So you have a makeshift line. The backup center got a hamstring injury against the Steelers. So it could be a really makeshift line against a really good Browns defensive line. That's not what you want. And on the other side, the Browns, left tackle DeJuan Jones on IR, Jack Conklin questionable, 2 receivers also out. So you're not even going to have the full, amount of weapons here for Dillon Gabriel in his first start. Obviously, a lot more mobility than he's had in the past, than the Browns have had in the past with Joe Flacco, who was a statue back there. And the Browns offense, as you would expect, was dead last in EPA per play with Flacco. This is also a really important game for the Vikings. They have a bye after this, and then they're facing the Eagles, at Chargers, at Lions, Ravens. So this is a must-win game if they're going to do anything resembling making a playoff push. And it's just going to be a can Carson Wentz protect the ball and do enough to outduel Dillon Gabriel, and whether that's 13-10 or whether that's 24-21, whatever it looks like, the Vikings just have to walk out of there with a win.
That's just staggering when you think about this is a 14-win team from last year, right? Like, and I know injuries are part of all of this conversation, but we're sitting here with the quarterback situation in Minnesota that doesn't look solved, obviously. And I think the other part of it is we're getting no more proof of concept of anything on JJ. So, like, this is just more time where we still don't really know who JJ McCarthy is or what JJ McCarthy is going to be at the pro level. We could talk all day long about the possibilities, but if you're the Vikings, this is part of why in the offseason, C-Rob, when we talked about all of this, it was like, man, are you really comfortable letting Sam Darnold go? And Vikings fans always tell me, yes, we don't want that. He loses playoff games. And Ben, you can speak to this, but I'm sitting here saying 14 wins is pretty good. Last year, things looked pretty good at 14 wins. It doesn't look that easy, and I just don't feel like we have any proof of concept, C-Rob, of what the Vikings will be at quarterback even throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was supposed to be part of the process, right? Was the patience of getting J.J. McCarthy in there and then living through the experience of getting him experience, of having him face defenses like the Cleveland Browns. I'm not necessarily unhappy for J.J. McCarthy that he doesn't have to face the Cleveland Browns defense. I would not want a young quarterback to face that defense. I think it's, again, aside from the Detroit Lions game, I really do look at that Browns defense like it's a top 3 unit in the league when it's fully healthy. And, but I get it. Right now, people are looking at Sam Darnold and they're saying he does look like a reasonable facsimile of what he was in Minnesota. He does look like it wasn't just the skill position pieces and Kevin O'Connell that made Sam Darnold what he was in Minnesota. Realistically, he does look like he kind of turned that Geno Smith corner that Geno Smith turned a few years ago. But again, this was always going to be part of the process for the Vikings. Whether J.J. McCarthy was on the field right now or not, you were going to have to go through whatever the struggles were that presented themselves. And that's injury as well. He was injured as a rookie. I think you have to find out, is he an injury-prone type of player? That's another thing they're going through right now. We don't know whether that's legitimate or not with J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings are just going to have to take their lumps as they come and manage it. But I don't think we should punch J.J. McCarthy's ticket in either direction right now, either as a bust or, potentially a success, obviously, which no one, I think, would do that at this stage. There's a lot left ahead of him. And we've had the conversation on the show already about, people cashed out on Michael Penix after, a poor performance. And we saw he was able to gather himself and be that player that a lot of people think he can be. Do I think that's the last time he struggles? No. Do I think J.J. McCarthy is probably going to have peaks and valleys once he gets back in? Absolutely. It's just, how does Kevin O'Connell see this unfolding with him? And then I think you have next offseason to decide where are we really at with this player.
Ben, what's your level of confidence? Right, give me your level of confidence, Ben. How we feeling?
Yeah, look, I think that ultimately was really unique as well about this Vikings situation. I think Mike Sando had a tweet about it earlier today. They're just very rarely teams that win over 80% of their games and then get rid of the starting quarterback or have a new quarterback. Right. I think it was like the Broncos when John Elway retired. It was actually the Vikings with Case Keenum when they went to the championship game and then he left. Kirk Cousins came in. And now this is the same with J.J. McCarthy. So usually when you have these young quarterbacks, right, like we saw with the New York Giants, you're deciding when Jackson Dart starts, but the Giants have no playoff aspirations realistically. So even though they have a difficult schedule, that's why you throw them in against the Chargers. What's the worst that happens? They lose and they go 0-4. It doesn't really matter to the season. The Vikings, the roster is ready to win now. They are a playoff potential Super Bowl contender with the right quarterback. That's why Aaron Rodgers was in discussions in the offseason to go there. So this decision we're going to have to see over the next year or two, because I think Vikings fans and others would say with Sam Darnold, he looked great, but if the Seahawks make the playoffs and he looks terrible in the opening round, I think that Vikings fan would say, well, this is what we saw last year. Now you still have to get there. And certainly the Vikings with a
point.
tougher schedule and everything else and injuries, they have to make the playoffs first before it even gets that comparison. But it's going to be a really fascinating, divergence point for the franchise. And we'll just see kind of at the end of this season, at the end of the next season, what Darnold looks like, what JJ McCarthy looks like. And you can kind of say, did they make the right decision or the wrong decision? But right now, especially with the offensive line injuries, there's just so much. It's difficult to evaluate properly anyone anyway.
And one real quick. I want to stress this too, because I think people forget this. JJ McCarthy did not have any physical reps beyond the preseason last year. So I know everyone's like, well, hey, this isn't really year one, it's year two for him. It really is year one for him in terms of actually feeling what the speed of the game is when he steps out there, in terms of going through practices over the course of the season and consistently seeing what the speed of a defense is like in practice. So I would say, again, he deserves grace. Like every rookie quarterback deserves grace. We've talked about that quarterback class from last year. We've been in and out on a number of guys. Jason, you talked about it yesterday. Knicks, in and out of Knicks. Drake May, we were out, as soon as he got in New England, and then we were in again. Penix, I think unfairly has been written off, after only a couple of starts, but then now he's written back in again. We just need to relax here and let these guys, Caleb. I mean, Caleb's the perfect example of this. Like Caleb, it wasn't even like he put up a horrible rookie season, and yet people were like, it's a referendum year for Caleb now in year two. Just let guys develop. Let them be what they're going to be. Let them try to meet the talent level that they have before we start, talking about, was it a massive mistake to move on from one guy or another? And I get the conversation with Darnold is special. It's not like that happens often.
But I will say, let's have that same context too, because you're right. And everything you just said, let's have that same level of patience with Dillon Gabriel. I asked Nate Tice this morning on our show on Yahoo Sports Daily, what would be success for Dillon Gabriel? And he said, making it out alive. So, I just think, a little patience goes a long way. Speaking of ugly, the Broncos taking on the Eagles. Eagles 4-0, but the Eagles have had some ugly moments. It has not necessarily been pretty on the field, but they are 4-0. And so A.J. Brown had his cryptic tweet that was then deleted, and he said wasn't about the Eagles. It was just about his feelings in the moment. Ben, what's your level of confidence here on Philly? Where are you on the Eagles right now?
I think the Eagles are just, until they lose, you kind of have to believe in them, right? Now, separating the tush push, I know how C-Rob feels. I don't think you should be able to run a counter play off of that. I think that's just a bridge too far that everyone's loading amazing. Up, and now you can run off. It was a delight. That's a conversation for a separate time. Look, this is a team since the start of last season that's 22-3, including the postseason. They're 17-8 against the spread over those games, and they're 12-3 when they're laying 6 points or fewer. So that's what this spread is. Eagles down to -3.5. They were about a 5.5 point favorite. Some sharp money on the Broncos to push that number down. The Eagles are only the 12th ranked team in DVOA, which I thought was interesting. And the Broncos are actually 10th, the 10th ranked offense and the 10th ranked defense. So the Broncos defense, if anything, has been a little disappointing. The Eagles just kind of keep grinding out wins, obviously grinding out that win against the Rams and the miracle cover, another game they potentially should have lost. This, though, I think you still have to maintain the Eagles' confidence. They're still the Super Bowl champions. But this is a game that I've circled. I do think the Broncos have a shot in this game. Broncos arguably could be 4-0. They kind of lost a dumb game against the Colts with that leverage, penalty. The Chargers game was right there. They kind of dominated and still lost it. And Saquon Barkley, I think it's gone under the radar in that 4-0 start. He's averaging 3.1 yards a carry. His longest rush of the season is 16 yards. Saquon Barkley, 16 yards. So, and it's also a case, he's had at least 18 carries in every game. So it's not like, they were blowing out a team and he didn't get a lot of carries, he didn't get a chance. Like, it just hasn't really been working. So I think that's what's an interesting play in this game. You still have to, the Eagles are still the Eagles until somebody knocks them off. They just keep winning games. But ultimately, do I think the Broncos can cover this game and potentially win? Yeah, I do.
And I think what Ben mentions too that is really interesting here is that has gone so far under the radar. I think it's like people who are casuals who are not paying attention really closely to how the Eagles are winning their games. I think there's
2,000 yards last year.
Well, there's just this presumption if people aren't paying attention that, well, the Eagles are running the football. Oh, we keep hearing about problems with Jalen Hurts or, AJ Brown not being happy. So the presumption is they must be winning running the football. They're not really winning running the football, at least not effectively the way they did over the course of last season, particularly down the stretch. So I think there's ceiling here. That should make you feel good about the Philadelphia Eagles right now. And correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think their wins are over the Rams, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. Is that right? Now the Ravens are falling apart, but it's not like they're beating bad teams. They're beating teams that we expect should be there at the end of the season. Now we'll see ultimately, obviously, with the Ravens, but look, the running the ball, that to me tells me there's something left on the table there for this offense to get right as it moves forward. I'm not so concerned about the AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts stuff. I mean, like, AJ Brown is how many throughout history wide receivers complain, man. They want the ball. They want to be, it doesn't matter. Right. You can be 10-0. They want to, and it's just germane to the position. And every wide receiver that's ever been out there knows the squeaky wheel gets greased. Even if it's in a cryptic tweet that they say isn't really about anybody, you still are drawing attention to yourself and saying, remember me, I can make plays for you. And A.J. Brown has done that in the past, and we've seen that. We've talked about, is there a rift? Is there a problem between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts? And ultimately, it got itself worked out. Now, it helped that they had a running game. I think there are other pieces in that offense that are still going to be brought to bear as the season moves on. But I'm really not worried about the Eagles. And let's be real, guys. The first month of the season, I think, for most teams is now the preseason. So if you can get out of the preseason, which is that first quarter of the season with 4 wins, you're in pretty good shape.
Especially when you win a game where you had 33 yards of offense in the second half and didn't complete a pass.
Yeah, and that's not complete a pass. Like, it's crazy, but yet you still win.
But I'll be consistent. Last year when we kept saying, well, the Chiefs don't look right, they just win. The Chiefs don't look right. I kept saying, does it matter? I mean, you won football games. Like, I'm sort of at the same spot with the Eagles. Does it matter?
But Fitz, when did they fall apart? Let's be fair here. Like, when did they fall apart?
I mean, the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Like,
okay, the Super Bowl. Right. Okay, and which isn't ideal, but I mean, they still were a Super Bowl team, even with us having all that, concern and what are the Chiefs going to do? They still were a Super Bowl, team. I get what you're saying. The ultimate goal is, but that is what I'm saying. Like, the final game.
Yeah, it's not like at some point winning is just part of your identity. The Chiefs did it last year. The Eagles are doing it this year. I don't really care that they're 4-0. And if you'd have asked Chiefs fans coming into the season, you think you could be 4-0 with Saquon not being on track, A.J. Brown out here tweeting about everything, not getting the ball enough, and 33 yards of offense with no completed passes and a half, and still be 4-0? Eagles fans should be out here just celebrating, doing naked cartwheels in the street. Like, it's just this is a great this is a great year. I don't care how they win.
I think as well, it's just because the eye test doesn't match up, right? You say, how are they that good? They're still 4-0. And to put some numbers to that, Aaron Schatz, who does great work, FTN Fantasy and formerly Football Outsiders, the Eagles are the 7th lowest rated team, so the worst power rating, that's 4-0 in DVO history since 1978. And they're only one of 2 teams in NFL history to go 4-0 despite being outgained in yardage in all of those games. So there is something historically that not a lot of teams have looked like this and won the games. Now, ultimately, it's the Bill Parcells, right? You are what your record says you are, but they're still 4-0. But you can't say anyone's been particularly impressed with all these wins. I bet the Philadelphia fan base and the radio stations there are not, impressed necessarily and satisfied with how they've looked in this 4-0 start.
And I think the question for Fitz, I'll ask you this. That means really, where are you putting your faith right now? You're putting your faith, I think, on the coaching staff, right? You have to go, right, okay, there's some problematic things here. We're winning games. Sure, that feels good. But let's not ignore that there is a undercurrent here we should be concerned about. Running the football, being able to have an offense that's balanced both in the first half and the second half. So I'll just ask you, Fitz, are you confident enough in this coaching staff, which is experienced, to be able to get them righted in terms of the balance, winning games in a balanced way and not having an undercurrent of problems and winning in spite of some of those problems?
Yes. And I think when you have the experience that they have in big games that they've had, I just think it's taken them a second to get it gelled. I think it'll be gelled. I don't think by the end of the year we're going to be talking about Saquon being a problem. I don't think this offense is going to be a problem. And frankly, I also think that anytime you walk into every single game knowing that you can go 4 downs and you're going to be able to convert, I believe in the Eagles' ability to win close games because they're built to win close games. So I have faith. I do not have faith in the Texans, Ravens, but they are going to play. You mentioned panic, Ben. We'll get to it next. We've got plenty of panic coming out of Baltimore. We'll figure out what the right reaction is. We'll do it after a quick break. Welcome back to Inside Coverage. Got a lot of football action going on this weekend, including a desperation game between the Texans and the Ravens, and all eyes are on Lamar Jackson. Josina Anderson tweeted this earlier today. Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson, hamstring, not currently expected to play this Sunday versus the Texans, nor next week versus the Rams outside of faster healing, which still can be deceptive. The bye week is after that. That's a good, safe window to help better ensure the hamstring issue doesn't impact the season when it counts more, or doesn't reappear, I should say, when it counts more. C-Rob, thoughts on where we are with Lamar right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, Josina's plugged in, and I talked to somebody from the Baltimore Ravens organization the last 2 days, just kind of in passing, asking how are you looking at this, and immediately got pushback on this idea that hey, he's definitely out 2 to 3 weeks, and what I was told was they're going to test it and then take their time, take their time, and just sort of see ultimately where he's at. I think that makes sense. What Josina is reporting, that it looks like the next 2 weeks are iffy. Obviously, this week I think we can pretty much count them out for this week. But I think next week is one as well that we have to look at the Ravens and say, look, there's a very good chance that Cooper Rush is going to have to be the guy behind center the next 2 weeks. And I'd be nervous. I mean, look, this is we talked about it before. It's the schedule is look, the Houston Texans. Not a fan of getting the Texans after a get-right game because you don't know how much that win over the Tennessee Titans ultimately changes the confidence of the Houston Texans. And it still is a talented team with good experienced coaches who can motivate guys. Sometimes all it takes is getting one good foothold win, and all of a sudden you can spin and pivot off of that. And I feel like the Texans are very much capable of doing that, particularly with, Woody Marks is a player that got touches out of the backfield. They've been really trying to resolve the running game and having someone that they could, just depend on for 20 to 25 touches, both rushing and receiving. And I think Woody Marks really gave them a shot of adrenaline against the Titans. And, the Ravens defense, again, I know it's injuries, right? I totally get that. I think it's injuries. I think it's scheme. I think, some of the players that they have really counted on consistently, particularly, let's say, like a Roquan Smith, you're starting to wonder, is there a slight drop off with some of the stars who would pick up the slack when there were maybe problems that the Ravens defense was encountering. I do think that as much as I'm worried about Lamar, I think that defense could be the issue that we're talking about all the way into week 18.
Yeah, this is one of the wildest gambling games I think I can recall in a long time. So this look-ahead line, and obviously those lines come out the week before, and presumably Lamar Jackson was healthy, as he was healthy as far as we knew going into that Chiefs game. This was -10 for the Ravens at some sports books. It's now Houston -2. So that's a 12-point move.
8.
This is not all Lamar Jackson.
Houston -2? It went from Baltimore -10 to Houston -. So Lamar is worth 12? Does that sound right? That Lamar Jackson's worth 12 points?
So I obviously talked to a couple bookmakers. I do that article every year, which I did for Yahoo. Lamar Jackson was worth around 6.5 points, maybe a little more. I think he was the 3rd or 4th against the spread. Now, that was one sportsbook was 10, some were 9.5, but still, it's a massive move through so many key numbers, right? I mean, Ravens -3, -4, obviously flip. There was some sharp money finally once it got to Houston -2.5 to get back to 2, but this is really kind of do you believe in the Ravens? And this price is well over adjusted. Like there's been some sharp money on the Ravens money line at plus money, but I just can't recall a game that's that much. I think it's both Lamar, and if you consider him a touchdown, let's say, but then you also have Roquan Smith. You also have potential Kyle Hamilton. You also have maybe injuries on the offensive line with Ronnie Staley. And what a lot of gamblers and odds makers look at is what we call cluster injuries. And that's when you have a lot of injuries with the same position group. And the Ravens are absolutely ravaged everywhere, but especially at cornerback, where they might be down their top 2 corners, and Nate Wiggins was limited in practice today. So even if you think the Texans don't have a ton of weapons and it's really Nico Collins, well, it might be Jair Alexander guarding Nico Collins, or, I think it was TJ Tampa, if I'm getting his name correct. Incorrect, I apologize. But it could be a mash unit on defense there. And it's one of those things. The total also has dropped from 45.5 to 40.5. I don't recall a line move that's been that big. I think the Ravens also, I saw, had 11 starters listed on the injury report. And this defense was 27th in success rate. But the Texans offense is 30th in success rate. So you have a really bad Ravens defense against a bad Texans offense. Derek Stingley as well limited in practice today. But I was saying this Ravens injury report's like a CVS receipt. I've never seen anything like it in terms of limited participation, did not participate. Marlon Humphrey as well, Patrick Ricard. Like, it just goes on. And ultimately, you're going to have a backup quarterback against a still full-strength Texans team. Both these teams also 1-3 against the spread, so not, living up to expectations for bettors as well. It's a really odd game. I kind of lean towards the Texans just because I think at least they have, even if you have a bad offensive line that's healthy and you have your number 1 quarterback and wide receiver and all that. But it's just a very odd game, and obviously one that has swung significantly from what it looked like last week.
I mean, at this point, if we're looking at the rest of the division and the way it plays out, the Colts are a favorite against the Raiders, so they should win that game. They would go to 4-1. If the Texans lose, they go to 1-4. Same in the, if the Steelers win, they go to 4-1, and the Ravens go to 1-4. Like, I know we don't do a lot of hyperbolic stuff here, but Rob, it feels like the loser of this game is, I don't even want to say backs against the wall. Like, I don't know how you make up a 3-game gap. Like, it feels like the loser's dead in the water.
Yeah, 1-4 is, I don't have the one. I know 1-3, it's like a 14.5% chance to make the playoffs. 1-4 is obviously, I wish I had that in front of me right now. No, I think 1-4 is always a statistic I should have in my head, because every season I'm staring at teams and going, okay, this team could fall to 1-4. And I ask myself what the stat is in terms of making the playoffs. There's no question. I mean, it's almost impossible to crawl out of that hole. And
AI tells me 15 teams out of 253 since 1970 have made the playoffs after starting 1-4. That's according to AI, but that's about 5%. There's about a 5% chance. There we go. So you're telling me there's.
Thank you, AI. We can blame you later if there's a correction. Yeah. Correcting AI.
Look, I don't have time to double check it. We're live. Let's go.
It's yeah. I mean, I think the bigger question for me is when you talk about crawling out of 1-4, what's going to get you out of 1-4? You're not 1-4 because you started off the season with all your best players wiped out, or hey, we've got a number of players coming off the shelf. You got like Dallas sitting there going, well, we're gonna DeMarvion Overshown's gonna come in and make a huge impact for us. Well, that's the kind of player. Granted, massive knee injury, but he has shown in the past he could be a player who could probably come in and help your defense create a dent pretty quickly. I don't know when you look at these two squads. I mean, like, maybe if you told me Tank Dell is someone who's going to be able to come back this season for the Texans and be the Tank Dell that he was at his peak, I might look at the Texans and say, okay, well, that could change the offense, or at least give the offense a pretty big crease that it hasn't had early in the season. Woody Marks, when Ben talks about how he kind of leans into the Texans here, initially my thought is like, really, you're leaning into the Texans here? But then when I think about it, I'm like, okay, when I watched the Texans, and I probably watched about half of that game, he made a difference, and you could see he lifted the way that offense functioned. You could see on the sidelines the way that the coaches reacted to him, and then immediately you have DeMeco Ryans coming out afterward and saying, this is a guy we want to get him more touches. So even between those two, I would say the Texans are the team that, maybe Marks becomes the featured back that they've really looked for. They can streamline that offense a little bit more. You're running the football. You're playing the best defense you can possibly play. You're still in a defense. I don't know at this point. I guess I have to believe in the Colts. Normally in that division, I'd say, hey, you can make a run, right, in that division and potentially get into the playoffs. But the Colts now, to me, particularly, Fitz, talk about that team. If it gets to 4-1, I don't know. There might not be a 1-4 team that's tracking on a 4-1 Colts team. I can't believe I'm saying that too. It's so crazy to me how the Colts have flipped.
The Colts
this.
are good. The Colts are good this year. It's just you know,
it's going to take me.
It's real.
It's just going to take
and
me.
The Ravens.
That's fair.
I will say too, the Ravens still favored to win the AFC North, and part of that is because they still play the Steelers in Week 14 and then in Week 18. And after they have the Texans, then they have the Rams. That's not good. Then they have a bye, but then Chicago, at Miami, at Minnesota, at Cleveland, Jets, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. So there are winnable games, assuming people come back. Even if they're 1-5. There is still a chance, I think, certainly to make the postseason. Certainly in that division is really the Steelers, right? It's not the Browns. It's not the Bengals. So it's them and the Steelers. The Steelers have a tough schedule down the stretch as well. And I think that's why it's a little surprising to see that. And obviously the Ravens still favored. And we have kind of forgotten with the Texans, like Joe Mixon's a very good running back who has not been available for them. That's not a hole that they've been able to fill. Obviously the offensive line has not been able to block for CJ Stroud at all. I think the Ravens, though, in terms of their Super Bowl potential, that Matabike injury really, really hurts. And so it's one thing if they're a team that
Ben, we're not talking
is downgraded
anymore.
right now. I think it's then their future as well in the rest of the season and a playoff contender. That's the one I think. If he was coming back in 10 weeks, that'd be a different story. But he's such an anchor for that defense.
Yeah, five of the 6 remaining divisional games are still ahead of the Ravens, so they will have the chance to make up ground. Buccaneers, Seahawks, that's a good game. 2 3-1 teams. What do we make of this one, Ben? Are you buying Seattle at this point at 3-1?
Seattle, I am buying a little bit. This is still one of the, again, there's like NFL storylines and there's gambling storylines. And when I was out in Vegas for our Yahoo event, I went around to a couple of sports books, and one odds maker told me a guy had just come in and bet $150,000 on Seahawks futures. He bet them to make the playoffs, he bet them to win the NFC, and he bet them to win the Super Bowl. He would win just about $4.5 million if the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. He also, or somebody that week or later, hit up a couple other sports books and also bet on Seahawks futures. So somebody either knew something or is a really big Seahawks fan with some money to burn. The Seahawks are number 1 in DVOA right now through 4 weeks. I mean, they are the best team in the NFL by the advanced metrics. Obviously, those will change. But this opened Seahawks minus 2.5 at some books. Sharp money pushed it up. It's now Seahawks minus 3.5. This is still a difficult situation for the Bucs. Baker Mayfield's banged up. Mike Evans out. A long way to travel. Very good home field advantage for the Seahawks. Seahawks also off that mini bye because they played last Thursday. So I think it's a good spot for the Seahawks. And for the Bucs, I think we're also seeing just the importance of Bucky Irving and just an elite running back that they have. And it just doesn't seem like he's going to play at least this week, if not several weeks. They also have injuries in the secondary. So this seems like a good spot for the Seahawks and 2 kind of pretty surprising teams. The Bucs do have a top 10 defense by DVOA. But I think with those injuries, assuming Devon Witherspoon plays, I think he was limited on Wednesday. That's a big one, certainly for the Seahawks. But they play really well. They seem to just know kind of who they are, much in kind of the same way the Vikings did last year. Shed a tear. Strong defense. Offense doesn't have to do too much. They have a lot of explosive plays. They want to run the ball and limit the mistakes. And as long as they do that, they're going to be in every game. And they've won 3 of them so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, losing, if Bucky Irving doesn't play, to me, I mean, I would, to me, that's a significant downgrade for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I think when you really watch them offensively, the mentality that he sets, those games where Bucky Irving, you're watching him and you're going, God, this might be the toughest guy in the field. I think that permeates the rest of that offense. And I think it raises Baker Mayfield's game level. You can only ask Emeka Egbuka to do so much. With other stars out, Mike Evans being out now. If you take Bucky Irving off the field, Seattle's not stupid, right? I mean, they're coached well. They're going to know this has become their playmaker, and you're going to shade what you do. Your coverages are going to get shaded to Bucky Irving. He's going to get extra protection or extra attention, and you're going to look at Baker Mayfield. You're going to say, now you're going to have to find something else out there on the field to produce. And again, the travel, the home field advantage that you ultimately have if you're the Seattle Seahawks. I think you got to feel great about that. That is wild, the amount of money someone would put on the Seahawks. I'll say this about the Seahawks over the course of the season, though. If somehow Seattle was able to engineer the number 1 seed in the NFC, I might kind of lean into that a little bit because they have such an immense home field advantage playing, where they do in the 12th man. But again, we talked about this in the Minnesota segment. I don't know about Sam Darnold. I was so confident in Sam Darnold, and then we watched ultimately what happened when he got pressured by the Detroit Lions late in the season, got pressured by the Los Angeles Rams late in the season. I don't know if I could really put and the Seahawks. Now I'm less concerned about that just because I feel like, and now at the trade deadline, you do have the ability to go out and get another player, and I feel like some receivers are more plug and play than maybe other positions that you might go out and grab. If you want to grab a running back, you want to grab a receiver, I think you can get those guys at the trade deadline, and they can become big factors for you in December and January. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's other than Jackson Smith and Jigba and Sam Darnold, and then obviously you've got Charbonnet and Kenneth Murray in the backfield. That's really where that offense is going. And I'm stunned at that bet. It's kind of knocked me off my feet that someone would drop that much money on Seattle.
The one thing that doesn't stun me about Seattle is that DVOA, that defense particularly. It always sticks in my head. Ravens players, after Michael McDonald left as the defensive coordinator, were asked about his defense. And a couple of them noted at the time, it took 2 years to really get comfortable in it because of what they're asked specifically to do. I don't think it's shocking that we're seeing Seattle take that big leap forward because that is a coach showing his strength to that defense. I think that defense is going to be very good.
Fitz, I'm telling you right now, when he took the job in Seattle, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay were both like, oh, God, man. Like, they did not want him to take that job. They know what kind of mind he brings to the table, the type of coach he is, the mentality, the culture builder he is. They're very familiar with him, so this is not a surprise to them. And I just remember when he took the job and I went through training camps that offseason, you could tell they weren't pleased. They had hoped he would end up in another division, and now we're kind of seeing the results of that.
We'll see how that one plays out. Got a lot more to get into, including I had the chance to talk to Josh Hines-Allen about everything going on for the Jags this year. You can check it out next. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll do that for you next. Welcome back to Inside Coverage. Earlier today, I had the chance to hang out with Josh Hines-Allen from the Jags. I want you to check this conversation out. Really inspiring dude, really inspiring conversation, and a lot of good Jags talk. Check it out. All right, we are hanging out now with Josh Hines-Allen, the Jags defensive superstar, joining us. Really incredible cause that obviously you're part of, 41 for all. For cancer, for childhood cancer. Let's start there. How are you? How's your family? This obviously is so impactful because of your son. How are you guys holding up?
We're in a very positive space right now. He's in full remission. We rung the bell. So now the only thing left we had to do is just his monthly meeting, his monthly checkup with his doctor. And but for him, he's healthy. He's in school and he's just thriving the way he's supposed to right now. And mom and dad are, we're pushing along. We're, doing what we need to do as parents and as husband and wife, and we're still growing as well.
It seems trivial to talk about football, but we've got you here and we're going to do that. Let's have a little fun, talk about the season you're having right now because it's a monstrous one. So I want to go all the way back to when Liam Cohen was announced. A lot of people said a lot of things about Duval and the way that press conference went. What's Coach been like for you?
I mean, he's been awesome. He understands both sides of the ball. Obviously, he's calling the plays offensively, but he has his hand in the defense as well. He kind of knows, like he's always in our defensive unit meetings. He's always speaking about, when things come up offensively, hey, this is the reason why they do that. Like, he's standing up. He's explaining why offensive do this because of the looks that we give them defensively. So, which is allow us to get into the offensive mindset of, okay, that's what they want. Okay, let's play around that. Let's play around with what they think. So he does a hell of a job of just being with us and, being supportive for every unit and having his hand in everything. And so just to see that as a head coach is awesome. and he's very intense too. I mean, if you can see if you watch any of our videos after the games, man, he's very intense and he means every word. And you can't hate to play for a guy like that.
The defense for you guys, I mean, third and DVOA, turnovers everywhere. What's clicked this year?
I don't know. It's just guys. We just got those guys. You know what I mean? We got playmakers all over the field. We got guys that challenge each other on and off the field every single day in practice. We set a standard for ourselves early on. So now the expectations for us to play at a high level was already set during training camp. So for us, it's just to be where we are and communicate. If we communicate, we get pressure, affect the quarterback up front. We know our DBs are going to do what they need to do in the back end. Um, and that's the trust that we have with each other. They don't ask us to get sacks. They don't ask us to get pressure. They expect us to get pressure, and we expect them when we do get pressure that they're going to take the ball away. And that's exactly what we did. That's exactly what we're doing now.
They may not ask you to, but you get pressures everywhere. Third in the league right now in quarterback pressures. Do you feel sometimes like you're a little overlooked? We talk about pass rushers all the time. And do you feel like maybe you should be mentioned in that conversation more with guys like Miles and Max?
It's the competitor in me will love to, but then I also know what I do. And I know the people who watch film and understand. Because right now, like when you look at the stats, because I think a lot of people outside of the football world don't really they watch the game, they hear my name or whatever. But when you look at the numbers, my numbers isn't glaring, you know what I'm saying? Because they see sacks and tackle losses, they see all this stuff, and it's not up there right now. But I know when you turn on the tape and you can sit back and you can watch our games, and you can just watch the defense, watch all 11 guys, I affect the game. And I think for me, that's what my team needs from me right now is to just keep affecting the game, keep affecting the quarterback, play the run really well. And that's what I'm proud about. And if I can continue to do that, I think guys around will obviously understand that. But the national news, they're not going to talk about me until I get my sacks up. And I understand that, and I'm okay with that. But I know I'm affecting every game that I've stepped on the field in this year, and I want to continue to do that each and every week.
I mean, I know Jags fans that will say, hey, the Jags don't get enough attention. Y'all got a chance, though, Sunday night to get the whole world on notice against the Chiefs. What do you see in that matchup? What are you looking forward to?
Opportunity to showcase who we are, as a unit. Again, it's about the Jacksonville Jaguars. At the end of the day, um, they're a good team, good players. Obviously, one of the best players in the National Football League, which is awesome. It's a good way to let us know that it's not a fluke. We really do play really good football over here. Physical brand of football, and not get pushed around. That's one thing that we harp on each week is we're going to be the most physical team out there. And I think once we set that standard early and throughout the game, that just gives us more confidence. So again, it's about us. Shout out to Kansas City, whoever we play against. But I think I know if we come out there, with that mentality that we're gonna whoop these boys, we can whoop these boys.
One of the guys that has that mentality, Travis Hunter. I'll ask you. You're with him every day. Is he a corner? Is he a defensive back, or is he a wide receiver when you see him?
He's both.
Can that sustain? Can you be both in the modern NFL? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean he's doing it right now. He's played he played snaps, 30 snaps, both sides of the ball. You know what I mean? So he's doing it. I think obviously, for him, he just needs to take care of his body, understand what, week to week looks like defensively, offensively in the playbooks. And if he can keep that up, I think football is football. You go tell him to go cover this guy, I guarantee he's going to cover the heck out of him. If you go tell him to run this route, he's going to run the route. So at the end of the day, man, if he can allow himself to play fast because he knows what he's doing, I think he's going to have a heck of a chance. And I can't wait for him to make that play for us so we all can celebrate and say, we told you. And I can't wait for that.
I love talking to pro players about college ball sometimes too, because moments matter from your memories. And I saw that you were put into the Ring of Honor for Kentucky. What's that mean for you to be honored that way?
I mean, being inducted into the Hall of Fame was definitely a huge honor. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into that organization, to that program. And I didn't do it for that. I did it for the guys next to me. and I wanted to achieve something that had never been done there, and also wanted to leave out the best player to wear blue and white, and that was my main goal. And so to be recognized for the things that I did on the field was a huge accomplishment, and it's just this is awesome to be a part of. I'm a part of history. I can never be forgotten there, and I want to keep building on my legacy throughout my whole career.
You also mentioned in your Instagram post about it from a 2-star recruit. What do you say to people, especially because it's such a competitive world now, NIL and transfer, and the way everybody gets into college football? What's your message to kids that maybe aren't seeing the same coming out of high school and they're trying to make their name?
I mean, stay at it. I know it can be. I know it's definitely hard. I don't know what NIL looks like. I don't know what that college process looks like. I left a few years afterwards. But I know for me, man, I just needed an opportunity, and I needed to push myself and challenge myself, and that's exactly what I did personally because I set a goal for myself each year. Nothing too like outlandish. Like I was coming as a 2-star, whatever. I knew I wasn't developed. I'm not coming in. I want to win SEC freshman of the year. My goal was I want to be on the field with the starters. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to take the field with those guys. And so when I saw that, when I ran out there for the first time with the starters, I was like, man, I worked for this. And then each year was just like, progress on what I want to achieve. And then my last year, man, I was just training my butt off every single day. I was just like, man, I want to be the best football player in the college football because I earned that right. So for me, man, it's just how much you willing to, dig into yourself and just, want it more than the other guy.
So what's the thing today that feeds you and motivates you the way that did then?
My son, my family. You can say that, I've achieved a lot in my career or whatever. And plus I want to win first and foremost. I think that's by far I want to win. But my motivation that keeps me fired up is knowing that my son battled his butt off for 6 months fighting cancer. If he can fight cancer, I could fight 300 pound men, fighting them off me and go get a sack, go get some tackles. So he put his body on the line. I can put my body on the line and I can sacrifice that for him.
I know you've got big goals on what you want to do for One for All. It's really incredible. I'm going to make a donation today. Thanks for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate what you're doing. Congratulations to where you've gotten with this and what you're doing to move forward. And best of luck to you and your family moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on, too. I appreciate this.
All right, gentlemen. I asked Josh about the obviously the big matchup against the Chiefs. What can we learn here in your mind, Ben, about the Jags when they're taking on a team like Kansas City? Hasn't always looked good, I know, but Kansas City sitting at 2-2. Everybody's trying to figure out a way to make KC great. What can we find out about the Jags, though?
The Jags are an amazing team. I watched a lot of that game against the 49ers, and they simultaneously look unbelievable and like a contender, and then also like a college team. And just it seems like Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen is going to blow up at some point. They just have been surviving, I think, on turnovers, right? And that defense has been getting so many turnovers. They're the number 3 overall defense by DVOA. They've been really good, but they've generated 13 turnovers, and they have the most EPA per play in the NFL generated from turnovers. So their defense has been really good. 4th in success rate. They're 3-1 against the spread. They can obviously rush the passer and rash the passer too, but they can also rush the passer. More importantly, they've been really good on that side of the ball, and they've done enough offensively. The running back, certainly ETN, looks like he's kind of been reborn a bit. And that's been interesting just because Trevor Lawrence has been up and down. And you've also seen Travis Hunter not really have the impact we thought potentially he could have on both sides of the ball. And so it's why it's such an important season for the Jaguars, just because they gave up that first-round pick to trade up. The Browns drafted Mason Graham. He looks great, and they have the Jags' first-round pick. So their defense has looked great. Their offense has done enough. They've held on in some of these games, right? We saw against the Niners late, Trevor Lawrence sliding, getting out of bounds instead of staying inbounds and running the clock. Like they still make some of those mistakes. Trevor Lawrence still misses on some throws. But they have some really good players, and Brian Thomas, like wide receiver, again, has been up and down. They've just been a hard team to peg. I think the Chiefs, you saw a little bit, a combination of Xavier Worthy coming back. And I was joking last week that we were talking about Xavier Worthy like he was Randy Moss in 1998, but the amount of respect we were giving the fact he was coming back, but obviously made a big impact on that game. They basically dominated the Ravens. And I do think injuries as well played a big part in that game. So I think we'll learn a lot about both teams. Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites. This open kind of 3 or 3.5. Not a ton of movement so far. I think the public will be on the Chiefs in this game, as you would expect. But I kind of still lean the Chiefs. It just seems like they're starting potentially to get that mojo back. And if you think about Chiefs teams over the last couple of seasons, losing on the road on Monday Night Football to the Jaguars is not something we would associate with the Chiefs, who are going to Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls. So this just seems like another a little bit of a get right spot. Maybe the Jags a little bit more of a mirage. And I do think that Trayvon Walker had wrist surgery. They said he could play on Monday. I don't know how many surgeries you can come back from in 3 days. That's not my expertise, but obviously a big injury if he potentially can't go, and some offensive line injuries for the Jaguars as well.
I think this is actually in a way, kind of I don't want to say a must-have game for both teams, but it's a very important game for both teams because, number one, I'm looking at the Chiefs and I'm saying, okay, Xavier Worthy came in and gave you a pair of explosives, both running the ball and passing the ball. You got a pair of 35-plus plays on offense. And it felt like it lit them. It felt like the pilot light had just been flickering and flickering and flickering on that offense. And we're like, who's going to step forward? We're questioning whether Worthy can step back and Rashee Rice can come in after a 6-game suspension, and then they can just turn hard as an offense and then become, prolific again. It felt like Worthy coming in last week and providing that spark. To me, I was like, okay, this feels like you're breathing some life into this operation. What's important is you have to sustain that 2 weeks in a row, right? You're lighting the fire. You're blowing on it, trying to get it to really light. You need to do that, I think, 2 weeks in a row to show it can be sustained. And then all of a sudden, now you're on the doorstep of Rashee Rice coming back into that offense. And then things really can hit the ground running. And we feel much better about the Chiefs all of a sudden. Now, I think conversely, when you look at the Jaguars, the Chiefs are still the measuring stick. I don't care if they've been struggling. I don't care if we're looking at them questioning, is this, the same Chiefs team? Are we headed toward a mini reboot? All the questions we've gone through. The Jaguars are perennially a mess. I don't know how many stops and starts I've had during Trevor Lawrence's career where I thought that team was finally going to get it together. And then Liam Cohen steps in here. I think you see the backfield. Ben talks about Travis Etienne. Clearly, he's kind of gotten that Liam Cohen glow up with the running game. He definitely looks energized again. I think Basil Tootin. They have a good rotation there. And the one thing I think I would question, number one, well, there's two. First, Brian Thomas Jr., it's starting to build back into him being the piece he was last year, but it certainly did not start the season out with him being that dominant wide receiver one that we expected, on this team. I mean, you watch the film, there have kind of been times where you're like, is he bothered by contact? Did he maybe, I don't want to say short arm balls, but I think there were times where you were, there's misconnections between he and Trevor Lawrence where you feel like Brian Thomas is sort of looking to see if there's someone coming before he catches the football. I feel like now they're starting to get back on track, but it's nowhere near where it was last season, where we looked at Brian Thomas Jr. and said, this guy might be an all-pro by maybe year 2, maybe year 3. He could be an all-pro wideout for the Jaguars. And then, Ben talked about Travis Hunter. I don't want to say I'm concerned about Travis Hunter right now. I'm not concerned, but I'm curious how the plan is going to continue to move and develop forward, because he has not been a significant part of the offense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would argue he has not been a significant part of the defense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So how do you ramp that up really in both areas? Because you want him to be a key player on your offense. You want him to be a key player on your defense. When I went through Jacksonville, and I had a chance to talk to people prior to the season, what I was told was, look, it's going to be a game-by-game basis. We're going to fluctuate the snaps that he gets on offense and defense. It could absolutely be 50-50. It could be 90-10, depending on what the matchups really dictate to us. I'd like to know kind of where they are in that timeline. Now, it's still early, And I've said this about the quarterbacks. We can't just make our decisions on guys after a month of football. But I do sort of want to know, is he going to be more of a wide receiver where you're starting to amp him up as we move on into October and November? Is he going to be more of a defensive back? And if he's not, how do you make him a better player and a larger part of your scheme, both offensively and defensively moving forward? Because he just has not had an impact. And I would ask either of you guys if you disagree. I don't feel like he's had an impact on either side of the ball that makes me go, okay, this is the super dynamic athlete, wide receiver corner that I thought they were getting in the draft.
I think to Ben's point, considering especially that they traded up to get him, there is more expectation. It's a leveraged expectation that comes with that. And it's why, frankly, I would have loved to have seen him allowed the grace to become great on one side of the ball and then add the other side of the ball in. Like that to me would have made a lot of sense. But instead, it just sort of chops this whole process in half in a weird way. This game, though, does, guys, feel like a narrative maker. Like, we're so used to seeing the Jags play a really bad Thursday night football game against the Titans at some point that people are forced to watch. Like, this is at home on a standalone TV time against the Chiefs. Like, I think the Jags can really force the entire world to pay attention with this game or not pay attention with this game. Like, it is interesting. I think there's a real opportunity, but I do think, C-Rob, you're right. Like, Travis Hunter has been fine. It's just he wasn't drafted to be fine. We had a higher expectation than that. Ben, you agree?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think the only concerning thing is just there was a little bit of we're smarter than you are, I think, potentially coming out of that front office, right? And we're trading up to get this guy and generational talent, both sides of the ball. They're going to want to put him in every position to succeed, to say, see, we were right and you were wrong. Right. And through 4 weeks, it has not looked how we thought it potentially could look. And so that's the only thing. They're going to put him, they would put even more of a spotlight on him than even if he was the number 2 overall pick, because they also traded next year's first and picked him number 2. So that's the concerning part, I guess, is it a question of they're not getting him enough touches? They're not putting him in the right position to succeed both on offense and defense? Or is it he's not getting as much separation as a wide receiver as we thought, or he's not covering people as well as a cornerback as we thought? And that, I think, is the concerning part. And does that mean they're then playing him less potentially on one side or both sides of the ball because that's happening?
Right. And I think that's it, Ben, where it's like when I say I want to know what the plan is, part of that is wanting to know, okay, well, what have been the limitations? Like why do you feel like he's not been a larger part of your offense or your defense? Is that play? Is that just trying to find the balance, which maybe has been tricky behind the scenes, up until this point? And as you said, you traded. The Cleveland Browns are very happy with Mason Graham. He's a big part of a huge cornerstone class potentially of rookies with the Cleveland Browns moving forward. So that does put some pressure on it, knowing that you also gave up a first round pick. But I think the one thing I will say about the Jaguars is, if you do shift that and just go, hey, yeah, maybe we did act smarter than everyone else, but we're going to put them on defense or we're going to put them on offense, and we're really going to force more of the workload that way, let him develop there. We will make it, as you said, Fitz, more of a one-sided development, and then we'll ease in the other side. If they win football games, no one's going to care. If you beat the Chiefs, however you develop him, great, it worked. Like no one, as long as you win, it gives you all the runway you want to develop Travis Hunter however it needs to be done.
Speaking of as long as you win, the Chargers were the hot darling for everybody when they opened 3-0. They take a weird loss to the Giants, and now they have the Commanders with the return of Jaden Daniels. How are we feeling on the Chargers, Ben?
Yeah, look, every season has these teams, right? And ultimately, this is where we talked about before with cluster injuries. Now you got Joe Alt with an injury, and you had Rashawn Slater before the season. There's only so many of these. You can take one all-pro tackle and survive. It's difficult to take two and survive. Yeah. So we see Hines-Allen as well, didn't participate in practice. Mekhi Becton limited. So they have some injuries along the offensive line. Derwin James, certainly, if he can, you figure he'll probably go, but he was limited on Wednesday as well at practice. This is Chargers -2.5. A lot of threes out there as well. So Chargers -2.5 or -3 at home against the Commanders. Public all over the Chargers. Somewhat surprisingly, maybe not knowing 100% if Jaden Daniels was going to go. And then the Chargers still looking like a solid team. They rank top 5 in the NFL in scoring defense, total defense, passing defense, but they are middle of the pack against the run. The Giants had 42 carries, but only 161 rushing yards. So they only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. And Chargers had the best defense in terms of success rate. So really good defense. Is Jaden Daniels 100%? Probably doesn't seem like it. These two teams also don't generate a lot of turnovers, which I thought was interesting. Commanders 30th in the NFL, Chargers 28th in terms of EPA added for turnovers. So it should be a good game. Another kind of measuring stick between two teams we think are pretty good, but is anyone kind of elite?
Every time I kind of start to question Jim Harbaugh, I end up regretting it. So I'm going to keep from doing that, even though when Alt went down, I thought to myself, like, this is just not sustainable. You can't lose two offensive tackles of this level, particularly when one of them was capable of flipping from the right to the left and still playing at the level that Joe Alt ultimately was. But I sit and I look at it and I say, well, can they streamline this in a way where they start to run the football more consistent? They become a dominant defensive team, which I think that's available for them right now. Jesse Minter doing a great job with the Chargers. Can you be a dominant defensive football team, run the ball, which, I'm not saying that the tackles aren't important, but you can still run the football with maybe not having your all-pro tackles there. The all-pro tackles, I worry about Justin Herbert and the ability to keep him on what was an MVP clip, the first few games of the season. That's changed a little bit. The one aspect of the offense that I think is interesting, they haven't really gotten Ladd McConkey going. Like, I don't know. It's not curious to me because Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston have just eaten up so much of the oxygen when it's come to the passing game, particularly Johnston becoming what looks like he could be a bona fide deep threat number 1 wide receiver. But I still think when they were at their best last year at times, it was when he was able to target Ladd McConkey at a high rate. A lot of efficiency. He can, make catches down the field. He can do short area stuff. I wonder if Ladd McConkey is still maybe that piece of the offense. When you lose the tackles, you look at Ladd and you say, we're going to play you out of the slot. We're going to throw you a lot of stuff fast, and you got to make things happen in space. Maybe he can be an element of that offense that can help keep them moving forward. I'm not going to question the Chargers because I did that coming into the season. I told everyone I was concerned the Chargers would be that team that I thought we had high expectations with bust potential, and then they came out of the gate fast, and I look like an idiot. So I'm just going to shut up when it comes to that.
The massive step forward for Quentin Johnston, I think, is one of the coolest stories of the early portion of the NFL season. He's absolutely been killing it. All right. What I know is we'll be back Monday to get you caught up on everything that happened over the weekend. It will be chaotic because it always is, but we'll be sure to hang out. If you've had some fun, be sure you check me out, by the way. Andrew will be back doing God's work on Monday, but check me out on Yahoo Sports Daily every morning on Monday through Friday with Caroline Fenton, hanging out 9 to 11 a.m. So we appreciate you guys watching us. Make sure you're watching all the great content on yahoosports.tv, wherever you get Yahoo's channels, and make sure you rate, review, subscribe wherever you get the podcast. On behalf of everybody behind the scenes, we appreciate you. We will be back Monday. Thank you so much for listening.